Hello and welcome to Natural 6. I'm Harry McEntire, the DM for this phantasmagorical gaggle of mostly lucid miscreants. Whether you're new to the Natural 6 family or if you're that drunk uncle trying to get everyone to do the conga at Auntie Gertrude's 80th birthday party, this recap of episodes 21 to 40 will get you up to speed on the gang's journey through Reliquiae so far. Now, if you are new to us, be sure to watch the recap of episodes 1 to 20 first. Together, the two recaps are like having two main courses for dinner. And Kelnis certainly approves of that. Now, here we go. Having discovered that a dark figure called the Wasp had been pursuing them, the party began to question the motivations of friends both new and old, and settled in for an unsettled night of sleep at Aska's house. The next morning found them making their way across Lake Fathom in Aska's boat to find the Forgotten Stair, which Dolus, an AWOL soldier of the Fortis Legion, had promised would lead them to the upper floors of the Fortis Legion's Sanctum. The crossing was not without incident, but they arrived at the stair as Dolus had promised and entered the secret passage. In true dungeon crawler style, the party made their way up the stairs, avoiding falling boulders, sentient glowing moss tendrils, a poorly constructed rope bridge, and swarms of spiders. Arriving at the top, they entered the sanctum only to be met by a group of Fortis Legion warriors apparently waiting for them. Dolus revealed himself to be Yilda, an old friend of Kelnis who had been thought long dead. He instructed the 6 Dragonborn warriors to kill Kelnis last, then teleported away, leaving the party facing the trap that Yilda had led them into.
Battle ensued, and as the first of the Dragonborn warriors was felled, Radian raised him from the dead and dubbed him Brian. Although of little effect during the battle, Brian proved a loyal, if somewhat ineffective, servant to Radian. The party successfully overcame the Dragonborn warriors, but unfortunately one escaped to bring Segovax, Gallant of the Fortis Legion, and other reinforcements into the fray, with the party hard-pressed to take on these new foes. Radian called on the deck of many friends, and with its help, Segovax was defeated. But not before he slew Radian's very best friend in the whole entire world, Brian the Zombie. Dolly, having discovered that Parvis, Antiqua of the Kobold God themselves, was being held prisoner at the top of the tower, led the party upwards. At the very top of the tower, outside as a storm raged around them, the party discovered Carvillius, Antiqua of the dead Dragonborn God Aurum, berating and beating Parvis. Seeing Kelnis, Carvillius raged at him for not living up to his bloodline. Kelnis said that he did not know his bloodline, and Carvillius brought forth the spectral forms of his birth parents, who she then turned against the party. Carvillius then transformed into a magnificent and deadly gold dragon and attacked our adventurers. Kelnis appealed to the spectral forms of his parents and, winning them over with a very fortunate dice roll and a moving family reunion, turned them against Carvillius. Elowen identified the dragon's weakness, a black gem at her chest. I protected Parvis, Radian called once more on the deck of many friends, and Carvillius was defeated. Returning to her true form, Carvillius, mortally wounded and now filled with remorse, blamed Barabask, Antiqua of the dead god Theolon, for corrupting her, and then she passed away. But not before giving Kel a glimpse of the tragic final moments of his birth parents' lives and deaths, in which the spinner was implicated. By the 9, a lot happened this episode.
Following the battle with Carvillius and the freeing of the exhausted Parvis, the party made their way down to the outside of the tower. Dolly, Radian, I, Elowen, and Parvis feather falling, while Kelnis eventually used Wild Shape to turn into a small black spider and crawl his way down. Meeting Aska and her boat at the bottom, they sailed away from the Sanctum and towards the far shore. The party made camp in the forest near the shore, starting a fire and reflecting on recent events. Parvis and I, the character not the me, had a heart-to-heart during which Parvis revealed that I's tribe and the Kobold God themselves would have gone to the Old Dark, and that there was a gate in Alvellion, the ancient but now derelict city of the gods. It was decided by the party that the Old Dark and an audience with themselves, the last remaining god of the virtuous, would be their next destination. Also, Radian licked a mushroom and had an allergic reaction. A tree came to life to attack the party. I summoned a burrowing owl friend aptly and confusingly named you, and the party made their way to the edge of the forest and the crumbling city of Alvellion to find the gate to the Old Dark.
At the forest edge, Looking out over the decaying, overgrown remains of the city of Alvellion, Aoife spied a scrap of fabric torn by stonework. Having identified it as a gloam cloak, Radian blew on the gloam whistle he had taken from a corpse at Mouse. I, the character not the me, using you, the owl not the... never mind, saw cloaked figures picking their way towards them through the rubble. Aoife, Parvis, and I hid, and Kelnis, Dolly, and Radian dressed as gloam, hoping to deceive the approaching group. Kelnis recklessly called one of them a pussy, and battle ensued. As the rest of the gloam were defeated, Dolly cast suggestion on one of them and sent him back to his camp, unable to report on the newly dead's presence. Dolly and Radian decided to disguise themselves and seek information at the camp, while I, Aoife, Parvis, and Kelnis waited nearby. Reuniting, the party made their way towards the Virtuous Hall, where they hoped to discover the gate to the Old Dark. Finding a safe spot to rest for the night, the party settled in to prepare for the next day, although Dolly's rest was interrupted by the spinner and a curious message from one of the web sending stones she carried. She replied, swearing to destroy the web, while the Spider Prince watched.
A fitful evening of heated conversations between various members of the party resulted in Aoife and I being at odds, with Dolly and Radian even more so, while Kel and Parvis, they were caught in between. Despite this, the party made their way successfully to the Virtuous Hall, where they discovered gloam-cloaked corpses, some partially eaten. Suddenly, the ground erupted, and an eyeless, teeth-snapping purple worm attacked the party. Kelnis and Hank were swallowed by the beast, but Aoife, in true Aoife form, unseamed the creature from mouth to ass. A search of the hall revealed kobold tribal markings, and with some clever and slightly bloody actions on the part of Parvis and I, opened a door in the floor leading down into the earth.
Descending into the depths, the party discovered a wondrous environment with kobold pictograms and caves that appeared to be copies of the Hearth Caves from Ai's, Parvis's, and other kobold tribes. Several battles with creatures in the caves left the party tired and in need of rest, but determined to continue on. Especially I, whose desire to speak with themselves was only growing stronger. Rest was not easy though, as fractures in the party grew and tested the cohesion of the group. Continuing through the tunnels, the party, not without incident it must be said, eventually reached a large cavern with a pool of water at the far end and a small rise at its centre, on which stood an irregular stone frame. Parvis confirmed that this stone frame was indeed the gate to the Old Dark, which they had been in search of. Before Parvis and I could activate the gate, the party was set upon by the presumed guardian of the gate, a great spiked toad and its smaller minions. As Parvis attempted to open the gate, the others fought the toad and its minions, but despite their best efforts, the attackers were gaining the upper hand. Radian pulled from the deck of many friends, which helped to turn the tide of battle by allowing the newly dead to benefit from a long rest. With everyone renewed, they fought on valiantly, and Radian learned more about the nature of the residents of the deck of many friends before casting polymorph on the great spiked toad, turning it instead into a garden variety frog. With the path clear, they entered the now open gateway to the Old Dark.
On the other side of the gateway, the party did not find themselves in the Old Dark, but instead found themselves in the Sister Forest, place of perpetual summer. A nice change from being underground, but not what they were expecting. Dolly and Kelnis immediately smelled the presence of a psychotropic mushroom called Somnium, highly addictive and apparently abundant in these parts. I, the character not the me, and Parvis discovered kobold markings in the trees guiding them through the forest. As they followed the signs, the party encountered a figure slumped against a tree, a Somnium-addled halfling who told them of a group called the Children of the Midnight Moon, and someone known as Vigil. Continuing through the forest, following the signs, they discovered two gloam resting and conversing beneath a tree. As the gloam moved on, the newly dead tracked them and soon discovered a clearing filled with 20-foot-tall Somnium mushrooms being grown and harvested by gloam and others. Enough Somnium to take out a whole city. A plan was formed and quickly fell apart, resulting in burning mushrooms, retreating gloam and Dolly as a warhorse, neighing and whinnying and being ridden by Radian. Honestly, you can't write this stuff, but you can make it up at a table.
I slipped off and tracked the retreating Gloam and others to a town called Haven, deep in the Sister Forest. Using his new invisibility spell, he followed the Gloam leader into the town. They rendezvoused with another person wearing a skull mask, and the two entered a building. I snuck around the side and silently cracked open a window and witnessed their meet with another, higher-ranking Gloam as they discussed the attack on the Somnium harvesting outpost. As his invisibility wore off, he crept back into the forest. Meanwhile, the rest of the party attempted to stealthily pursue the fleeing Gloam and harvest workers, but Dolly slipped on a branch and one of the harvesters discovered her. Surprisingly, though, she did not raise the alarm, but instead approached Dolly, calling her the Midnight Moon and telling her that he can ascend now. She offered to take Dolly to Haven, but Dolly refused. Eowyn, creeping up behind, knocked the Midnight Moon follower clean out and then hid her in the woods. I rejoined the party and they all found a safe space to rest and discuss strategy, family, and secrets. The next day, they boldly strode into town, crowds gathering, focusing on Dolly, their Midnight Moon, and they announced that they were to see Vigil, who Dolly secretly suspected might be her past romantic partner and the one who had sold her to the web.
The children of the Midnight Moon, most of whom were ill from Somnium use, began preparing a feast, while Vigil was notified of the Midnight Moon's arrival. He presented himself to the crowd from a balcony and announced that with the return of the Midnight Moon, their long wait was ended and he could lead his people into the world beyond. Dolly's suspicions proved true. Vigil was in fact Nox, her former partner upon whom she had vowed to take revenge. Nox invited Dolly to speak in private and she agreed, but I, the character not the me, insisted on accompanying her. Dolly rounded on Nox, accusing him of selling her out. Nox insisted he had nothing to do with her capture by the web years ago and that he had and continued to love her deeply, claiming that he tried to save her. Dolly did not trust his explanation. He went on to tell Dolly that he and the Gloam were harvesting Somnium in order to bring about the fall of the city of Barun and that he had been promised the city after the fall. He wanted Dolly by his side as ruler. She refused. Angered, he then told her that she couldn't leave, threatened I, and told her of his involvement in the fall of the city of Lode to the Gloam. He declared that the rest of the newly dead had betrayed the Midnight Moon and had them all, including Parvis, thrown into underground cells. Most of the party managed to escape the cells, though Parvis could not be freed, and the others made their silent way out of town, leaving Dolly and Parvis behind as Nox's prisoners.
Meanwhile, Dolly, still thinking that her colleagues were held in their cells underground, had a heart-to-heart with Nox, which cleared Dolly's head of any inkling of getting back together with him, and she said as much. In his anger, Nox and the Gloam leader Lilith had Parvis publicly executed. In the forest, Radian came up with a brilliantly dangerous plan to rescue Dolly from Nox and convinced Kel, Eowyn, and I to do something none of them wanted to do: go into the deck of many friends and let Radian carry them into Haven through a secret entrance revealed to him by a child of the Midnight Moon. Really, you kind of got to watch this one to fully understand what really went on.
With Eowyn, I, and Kelness disappeared into the deck of many friends, Radian made his way towards the secret entrance. Emerging in the basement of a building inside Haven, Radian tripped on a flagstone, alerting people above. Deciding that the jig was up, he made more noise until someone opened the hatch, whereupon he polymorphed into a bat and flew out. Meanwhile, Kel, Eowyn, and I, all inside the deck of many friends, were having a lovely chat with a spirit named Erastus Gracie, who had been promised Dolly's soul by Radian. Questions were being asked when they were all summoned from the deck by Radian. I, Kel, Eowyn, and the soul-hungry Erastus emerged from the deck to find that the battle had already begun. Dolly was trying to kill Nox, and Lilith was trying to kill Radian, and Erastus wanted to take Dolly, but Dolly told him to take Nox, while I wanted to kill Lilith, because Lilith killed Parvis, and Lilith was now trying to kill everyone. And Kel and Eowyn did their best not to be killed by anyone, while Nox turned into a wannabe mushroom god and tried to kill everyone. In the end, Erastus took Nox for his soul prize, and the party licked some pretty serious wounds.
Much reflection was had by the party in the aftermath of this great battle. Kelness put in place measures to help the people of Haven recover from their Somnium addiction. Parvis's body was placed in the bag of holding, of course, and the party began to make their way to the autumn forest and the old dark.
Travelling from summer into the autumn as they left the sister forest for the mother, the party came upon members of the Gloam harassing sunken-eyed, somnium-addled children of the Midnight Moon. Unable to witness such injustice and do nothing, the party killed the Gloam members in a rather awesome series of very cool moves by everyone. The party learned more about the Gloam's activities nearby, and after some discussion about how to move forward, they all settled in for the night. The next day, they made their way through the forest towards the Old Dark, following the kobold signs, and found themselves at the edge of a felled section of trees, beyond which there were buildings huddled beneath a ridge, and Gloam and servile children of the Midnight Moon everywhere.
I, the character not the me, turned invisible, and Kel turned into a raven, and the two of them went to explore the camp while the others stayed safely hidden in the tree line. It became clear that this was a Somnium production facility for the higher-strength Somnium in the nearby caves, and that the Gloam were using the Children of the Midnight Moon to gather vast quantities of the mushroom and prepare them to be transported to Baroon. It also became clear that the strength of the Somnium was such that prolonged exposure to it would turn a person into a mass of raging mushrooms, hence the shrouds of cloth soaked in Hortensia tincture that were being used by Children of the Midnight Moon and Gloam alike. I, the character not the me, discovered kobold signs at the entrance to the cave, meaning that they were nearing the Old Dark and the kobold god themselves. Returning to the others, Kel, a bit addled by proximity to Somnium in the storage sheds, they reported of their findings and waited until nightfall to attempt to traverse the camp unseen and enter the caves. Night fell. I, the character not the me, created a distraction by lighting one of the storage buildings on fire while the rest of the party made their way to the mouth of the cave with each of their heads wrapped in cloth, permeated with Hortensia to ward off the effects of the Somnium. Except for I. It turns out he's immune. Lucky sod. The distraction worked, and Dolly used suggestion to convince the guards at the mouth of the cave to assist with the fire. Into the caves they went.
Within the caves, the newly dead discovered a handwritten note that declared that the Children of the Midnight Moon were banned from the lowest levels of the caves by order of an individual called Tella. Moving further into the caves, they discovered the bodies of those who had succumbed totally to the mushrooms, becoming hosts for the very fungus they were harvesting. Continuing their exploration of the caves, they fought Somnium-consumed Children of the Midnight Moon, learned that Tella's plan involved killing in cold blood, and ultimately discovered the Old Dark and the kobold tribes within. They requested a meeting with themselves, and entering the area of the Old Dark called the Histories, learned from the kobold god many new things. Themself had been searching for I. The Spider Prince was the one responsible for the deaths of the gods on Mount Atria. Kel's amulet used to be themselves and is a powerful totem protecting Reliquiae. The Deck of Many Friends is another totem protecting the Feywild, and the souls within had broken a promise to the gods at the beginning of Reliquiae. Radian is actually a summer eladrin from the Feywild. There are dragons in or near the walking forest of Lathi, and finding a white stag there is the key to finding the dragons who may be able to help restore balance between the realms of Reliquiae, the Feywild, and the Shadowfell. Man, we learned a lot. As the party considered their options, themselves initially refused to let them leave the Old Dark for their safety. However, interventions by Dolly, Elowin, and Radian eventually convinced them that the party were needed out there in Reliquiae to battle the spread of the web and the Gloam's influence. They left themselves to ponder their role in the world and returned to the other caverns to mingle with the kobolds.
The party split up to explore the Old Dark caves. I and Dolly sought out Scout, one of Dolly's old gang members in the infirmary. Elowin wanted to hear the stories and see the paintings in the half cave, and Kelnis wanted stew, while Radian wanted to be left alone. Having reconvened in the half cave, they settled in for a night's rest, I sleeping next to a warm kobold hearth for the first time since he left the caves of his old home. The next morning, they prepared to leave the Old Dark and venture forth into the caves to discover what the Gloam were doing in the deep caves below. Before leaving, though, I gathered as many kobolds as he could and addressed them. He told them of Parvis, producing the chains that held the Antiqua atop of the Sanctum. He told them of what Parvis had taught them and how he saw the world. He told them the stories of Parvis. A voice joined him, then another, and another, until voice after voice called out with the stories of Parvis, and then the stories of I, the two mingling and becoming one. With that, they left the safety of the Old Dark to face whatever was to be found deeper.
The party moved deeper into the caves, the Somnium stronger, and despite their precautions, Dolly began to feel the effects of the mushroom's presence for the first time, becoming mildly confused, her judgment affected. Before long, they emerged into a great cavern filled with towering Somnium caps. At the far end was a natural raised bridge in the rock, with a group of the Gloam gathered around a fire of pale flame, each holding a bound and gagged member of the Children of the Midnight Moon. The party could hear a voice intoning in the semi-dark, and as they stood in the opening to the cave, their eyes adjusting, they realized that the voice belonged to one with whom they were all familiar, the Spinner, Lieutenant, or Lieutenant, of the Web's Spider Prince. In their guise as Teller, they were overseeing a dark ritual that would see all 9 of the bound Children of the Midnight Moon slaughtered. Our heroes engaged the spinner and the gloam in battle, attempting to disrupt the ritual and whatever its nefarious purpose was. They were hard-pressed, fighting on all sides. Radiant drew from the deck of many friends, revealing Prince Bell, who only hung around long enough to bequeath a magical drum to Radiant before disappearing at the dread sight of the spinner. The spinner, avoiding all attempts to stop him, managed to open the gate using the souls of the fallen, pulling the souls into a deck of cards, not unlike the deck of many friends, and a rift of darkness, like a wound in the world, appeared in the air before them. Radiant, hell-bent on besting the spinner, called on the deck of many friends again, bringing forth Grizza, a capable and resourceful kobold who was able to reveal the spinner's remaining health, resistances, and immunities, and then she too disappeared. The spinner, however, had the upper hand, taking control of Dolly and Elowin to attack Radiant, though his new staff of defense prevented him from taking damage. He offered the newly dead a deal. He would spare their lives if they were to give him Kel's amulet and the deck of many friends. The deal was refused, and the spinner brought forth from the rift of endless darkness a creature of splintered bone and torn flesh, a beast from the Shadowfell. So horrible was this beast that even the last remaining gloam, a chap called Carl, turned to attack it, abandoning his fight with the newly dead in favor of survival. The spinner and his dark beast fell upon the party, striking down Kelnis, Elowin, and Radian with chain lightning. Dolly brought back Radian with a healing word before she too was struck down. I, the character and the me, used a new spell, Gift, to revive Kelnis. Kelnis revived Dolly, who revived Elowin, who finally delivered the killing blow to the creature. The spinner, shrugging off the party's apparent victory, turned to them and said, "The darkness goes on and on." A new voice was heard in the cavern, the voice of a god. The kobold god themselves appeared, calling the spinner by the name Moloch and reminding him that themselves' power outweighed Moloch's in the mortal plane. The spinner stated a being was already in the Feywild that would bring about its downfall, that the shadow will flood. With that, he teleported into the rift and disappeared.
With the rifts still open and themselves having spared the party the effort of trying to finish the spinner / Moloch off, attention turned to why themselves had chosen to intercede rather than stay safely hidden within the old dark. The kobold god explained that after their previous meeting with the party, they had considered all that had been said. They spoke of the fear they had always carried with them, how they refused to acknowledge things they had known, deep down, to be true, and how the courage of I, the character not the me, Parvis, and the others had reminded the god of the values and strength that had once defined them. They also revealed their fear that it was their divine magic that had caused the Somnium to thrive down there, and that had allowed the spinner to manipulate that power to create a passage between worlds. That rift had been made by a god, Moloch, the god of death, as the spinner was revealed to be, and so only a god would be able to unmake it.
After tasking I with helping the kobolds to understand the world above, the kobold god, the last of the virtuous themselves, sacrificed themselves to close the rift between Reliquiae and the Shadowfell. A sad moment for all. Attention then turned to Carl, the remaining gloam, who had sided with the newly dead in the fight against the beast from the rift. As the party questioned Carl, they learned that the city of Brack had surrendered and that Barabask, Antiqua turned would-be god, had declared war on Baroon and the Council of Equals.
Not quite knowing what to do with Carl, the party debated his fate. Some wanted to kill him and some to work with him. In an effort to neutralize the potential danger he presented to the party, Radian cast Mind Spike, hoping to track his movements. However, the dice told a different story, and poor Carl's brain exploded out of his nose. Goodbye, Carl. Returning to the old dark and the tribes of kobolds therein, I told the kobold elders of themselves' sacrifice, and a little of what awaited them in the world above. The party settled into discussion about what to do, where to go next. Elowin, concerned for those of her family in Baroon, was adamant that this should be their next destination. Others felt strongly that finding the dragons in the walking forest of Lathi, who may be able to assist, was more pressing. Elowin, feeling unsupported, found a spot to rest at a different fire.
After a night of somewhat disturbed rest and individual and collective introspection, the party awoke to the realization that without the kobold god themselves, the kobold tribe's means of surviving in the old dark would only stretch to a week. Their magic had made it possible for them to live in here safely. Without him, they'd have to venture into the wider world to survive. I suggested to the kobolds that a partnership with the Children of the Midnight Moon and the small town of Haven might be a way for each community to thrive. The Children of the Midnight Moon providing food and the kobolds providing protection.
I, the character and the me, then asked if there was any other way out of these caves other than the one through which the party had entered. Avoiding the remaining gloam and the gloam camp outside the cave entrance was preferable to fighting their way out. No, was the answer. However, it was suggested that there may be another answer to be found within the histories, where the party had first met with themselves. Gathering in the histories, the party and many of the kobolds discovered the possibility of another way out of the caves. In a ritual that brought forth stories of themselves, the party used the gods' pots of paint to carve a passage through the cave walls and all the way to the surface.
And that, my friends, brings you up to date for episodes 21 to 40. A story of staggering emotional complexity, psychological verisimilitude, and epic fantasy that could only be crafted by one of the finest wood elf wizard Dungeons and Dragons. Ben's changed the auto cue, hasn't he? Be sure to follow us on YouTube and check out our Patreon if you haven't already. We'll see you very soon for more adventures in the world of Reliquiae.